Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I work night shifts at a warehouse, so I do most of my grocery shopping during the day when the store is less crowded. Usually it's pretty peaceful, mostly retirees doing their weekly shopping and stay-at-home parents with their kids. I've been doing this routine for a few years now, and I thought I'd seen every type of shopper there was. Last Monday, I had a long list because I was stocking up for the week. My roommate had asked me to grab some stuff for him too, so my cart was pretty full. I'm talking about 2 weeks worth of groceries for 2 people. I knew it would take a while to unload, but I figured I'd get in line early and take my time. I picked the shortest line and started unloading my cart. I had a system: cold items first, then canned goods, then produce, and cleaning supplies last. I got in about halfway through when this elderly woman rolled up behind me with her cart. She looked to be in her 70s, wearing a floral print blouse and had her gray hair in a tight perm. Her cart wasn't that full, maybe 20 items at most. I was still pulling items from the bottom of my cart when I noticed movement in my peripheral vision. This woman had started placing her items on the conveyor belt right behind mine. Not at the end where you'd normally put stuff, but literally right behind my last item. I told her that I wasn't finished unloading yet. She looked up at me with an annoyed expression, like I was the one being unreasonable. She said that I was taking forever and that she only had a few things to buy. She didn't remove her items though. Instead, she just pulled them back about 6 inches on the belt, which was still moving. So her stuff kept creeping forward toward mine. I decided right then that if she wanted to play this game, I could play it too. Instead of continuing with my normal quick pace, I started taking my sweet time with each item. I pick up a box of cereal, examine it like I was reading the entire ingredient list, then place it on the belt. Then I do the same with the next item. The woman was getting more frustrated by the minute. Every few seconds, she'd have to reach forward and pull her items back as the belt carried them toward my stuff. She asked if I was kidding her right now. I told her I just wanted to make sure everything was positioned properly so nothing would get damaged. The cashier, a young guy probably in his early 20s, was trying not to laugh. I could see him biting his lip every time she had to grab her groceries. The cashier told me to take my time and said there was no rush at all. I think he figured out what was happening and was enjoying the show. I continued my painfully slow unloading process. When I got to my produce, I made sure to place each apple individually, turning them so the barcodes were clearly visible. The woman said this was ridiculous and threatened to report me to the manager. I asked her what she would report me for. Shopping too carefully? She huffed and crossed her arms but didn't actually go anywhere. Probably because she'd already committed to this line and didn't want to start over somewhere else. When I finally finished unloading, I struck up a conversation with the cashier about the weather while he scanned my items. The woman was practically vibrating with impatience behind me. The cashier said it was a nice day. I agreed and said it was beautiful weather, perfect for going to the park after shopping and taking your time to enjoy the sunshine. The woman groaned loudly at this. Then came the payment. Normally I'd just tap my card and be done with it, but today I decided cash was the way to go. I pulled out my wallet and started counting bills very deliberately, announcing each amount as I counted. The cashier was still fighting back a smile. The woman looked like she might actually explode. She said who pays with cash anymore, saying this was 2024. I explained that I like to keep track of my spending and that it was important to count every dollar. I made sure to count out the exact change, down to the pennies. When the cashier handed me my receipt, I studied it like I was checking for errors. Then came the bagging. The store had those reusable bags, and I'd brought 3 of them. I started arranging my groceries with the care of someone packing for a cross-country move. Bread on top so it doesn't get squished, eggs in their own special spot, canned goods distributed evenly so no bag gets too heavy. The woman asked if I was seriously going to organize my entire kitchen right there at the checkout. I told her I was just being responsible and wouldn't want anything to break on the way home. The cashier had started scanning her items, but she was so focused on glaring at me that she wasn't even paying attention to him. He had to ask her twice whether she wanted paper or plastic bags. She snapped back that she didn't care what kind and just wanted him to hurry up. I took my time folding the receipt and putting it in my wallet. Then I made sure each bag was comfortable to carry. When I was finally ready to leave, I turned to her and told her sweetly to have a wonderful day and that I hoped her shopping experience would improve. Her face was red, and I could practically see steam coming out of her ears. She started saying something about young people having no respect, but I was already walking away. As I was leaving, I saw the cashier having trouble scanning one of her items. She'd have to wait even longer while he called for a price check. My relationship with my sister-in-law has always been complicated. She keeps her house like a museum. Everything perfectly placed, not a speck of dust anywhere. I respect that, but it makes family visits with our 7-year-old daughter pretty stressful. My husband grew up in that environment, so he's used to walking on eggshells around his sister. I've always tried to keep the peace for his sake. Last Sunday evening, she invited us over for dinner. My husband was excited because his sister rarely hosts family gatherings, and he thought it meant she was making an effort to be closer to our family. I was hopeful too, even though past visits had been tense. When we arrived, she had prepared this elaborate spread. The dining table was covered with fancy dishes, curried fish with exotic spices, some kind of fancy eggplant salad, quinoa salad with pomegranate seeds, roasted vegetables, and this artisanal bread from an expensive bakery downtown. Everything looked beautiful and probably cost a fortune. My daughter took one look at the food and I could see the panic in her eyes. She's a typical 7-year-old when it comes to food: chicken nuggets, pasta, pizza, simple stuff. The curried fish smelled so strong it made her wrinkle her nose, and she's never been a fan of eggplant or quinoa. My sister-in-law enthusiastically told my daughter that she would love all the food, mentioning how she had made sure to get the best ingredients from the organic market. I tried to encourage my daughter to at least try a little bit of everything. My daughter took tiny portions of a few things but barely touched them. She did, however, discover the bread and absolutely loved it. It was this rustic, crusty sourdough with seeds and grains, the kind that falls apart when you eat it. She ended up eating 3 or 4 pieces, while my husband, his sister, and I got caught up in conversation about his work, her recent vacation to Europe, family gossip. My sister-in-law works as an interior designer for high-end clients, so she's always been particular about her surroundings. Her house looks like it belongs in a magazine: white furniture, expensive rugs, everything coordinated perfectly. Having a young child in that space always makes me nervous, but she had insisted we bring our daughter instead of getting a babysitter. During dinner, I noticed my daughter was being careful not to get crumbs on the white upholstery of her chair, but that bread was really crumbly. Every bite seemed to create more pieces. I was focused on the adult conversation, though, and honestly didn't think to check the floor around her chair. The evening went well overall. My daughter was polite and well-behaved, said please and thank you, complimented the bread. We helped clear dishes and offered to help with cleanup, but my sister-in-law insisted she preferred to do it herself later. We thanked her for the lovely meal, gave hugs goodbye, and left around 7. At home, we got our daughter ready for bed and she was still talking about how good that bread was. She asked if we could buy some from that bakery sometime. It had been a pleasant enough evening and I felt like maybe we were making progress with my sister-in-law. Then, at 11 that night, my phone chimed with an email notification. I almost ignored it since it was so late, but I saw it was from my sister-in-law and wondered if maybe she was sending photos from dinner or thanking us for coming. Instead, I opened it to find 3 long paragraphs of pure fury. She had discovered breadcrumbs on the floor under where my daughter had been sitting. According to her, our daughter had deliberately swept the crumbs from her lap onto the floor, and this was completely unacceptable behavior. She wrote that she had to get out her expensive vacuum cleaner to clean it up, and if she had noticed during dinner, she would have made our daughter vacuum it herself. She went on to say this wasn't the first time she had observed our child leaving garbage on floors without cleaning it up, She used phrases like extremely unacceptable behavior and completely inappropriate. She ended by saying this kind of thing might be tolerated elsewhere but not in her home. She also demanded that she be allowed to address this directly with our daughter, in addition to us correcting what she called our daughter's bad behavior. The whole tone was so harsh and judgmental. She was treating our 7-year-old like some kind of delinquent over breadcrumbs that probably fell accidentally while eating. I read the email 3 times, getting more upset each time. The next morning I showed it to my husband before he left for work. He seemed shocked by how upset she was about the situation. I told him that upset didn't even begin to cover it. She was acting like our daughter had committed a crime over breadcrumbs from food she had served us. My husband pointed out that we know how particular his sister is about her house, and maybe we should have checked the floor before leaving. I agreed that we should have, but argued that her reaction was completely over the top and she was talking about our 7-year-old like she was some kind of slob. I decided to talk to our daughter about what happened, but I kept it gentle. I asked her if she remembered eating the yummy bread at her aunt's house the night before. She lit up and said yes, asking if we could get some for ourselves. When I asked her what happened to the crumbs while she was eating, she explained that some fell down when she was eating because the bread was really crumbly. She said she tried to be careful, but it kept breaking apart, and that she didn't sweep them down there or anything. They just fell. I told her I knew she didn't mean to make a mess, and gently explained that next time when we're guests at someone's house, if we notice crumbs or spills, we should ask for help cleaning them up. She agreed and said she didn't mean to make a mess. I reassured her that I knew she didn't, and that she had been a good guest. That was it. No drama, no tears, just a simple conversation about being considerate when visiting others. But I was still fuming about that email. I spent the whole day thinking about how to respond. Part of me wanted to write a detailed explanation about how the crumbs were accidental, how our daughter wasn't deliberately making a mess, how the email was unnecessarily harsh. Another part of me wanted to defend our parenting and point out that this was a normal thing that happens when young children eat crumbly food. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that engaging with the hysteria would just make things worse. My sister-in-law had already decided our daughter was some kind of problem child, and we were terrible parents. No amount of explanation was going to change that mindset. So after 24 hours, I sent a very brief reply apologizing, mentioning that we had spoken with our daughter and thanking her. That was it. 3 sentences, polite but clearly different from my usual chatty communication style with family members. Now my husband is telling me I went nuclear with my response, and his sister is even more angry than before. She's been texting him about how rude and dismissive my reply was, how I clearly don't take her concerns seriously, and how this proves we don't respect her home. My husband thinks I should have written a longer, more apologetic response. He's worried about keeping peace in the family and doesn't want his sister to cut us off from family gatherings. But I'm standing my ground. She sent us a nasty, judgmental email over breadcrumbs that fell from food she served to a 7-year-old child. She treated our daughter like a delinquent and us like terrible parents. Now she's demanding a face-to-face meeting to discuss our daughter's behavior and our parenting. She wants to sit down with all of us, including our daughter, to establish ground rules for future visits to her house. She is talking about having our daughter practice proper eating etiquette before she's allowed back in her home. My husband is considering it. He keeps saying that family is important and we should try to work things out. But I've had enough. If she wants to treat my 7-year-old like a criminal over accidentally dropped breadcrumbs, then maybe we don't need to visit her perfect museum house anymore. I told my husband that if he wants to maintain a relationship with his sister, that's his choice. But I won't subject our daughter to being lectured and shamed by someone who thinks a child dropping crumbs while eating is grounds for a 3-paragraph angry email and a formal disciplinary meeting. The whole situation has blown up into this massive family drama, and I'm being painted as the unreasonable one. But I refuse to apologize for protecting my daughter from someone who thinks breadcrumbs on the floor justify treating a child like she's some kind of problem. My sister-in-law can keep her perfect house, and her perfect dinners. We'll stick to family gatherings where kids are allowed to be kids and where accidentally dropping food while eating doesn't result in character assassination via email. It started like any normal Saturday afternoon. I was restocking the women's section when this lady walked in. She was probably in her 40s, carrying a designer bag. She walked straight to our display window where we had our featured shoes on sale. These were limited edition designer heels. Really beautiful but ridiculously expensive. We only had 3 pairs left in different sizes. She demanded those red shoes with gold trim from the window. I asked what size she needed, and she told me size 7 and that she needed them today. I checked our inventory system on my tablet and had to tell her we only had sizes 6, 8, and 9 left. The size 7 had sold yesterday. Her face immediately changed. It was like watching someone flip a switch. She yelled about how those were her shoes and asked what I meant we didn't have her size. I tried to stay calm and explained that I understood she was disappointed, but we could order them for her. The next shipment would arrive in about 2 weeks. She went crazy, asking if I was insane. She screamed that she needed them for her daughter's wedding tomorrow and had been planning this for months. Now, here's where it gets weird. While we were talking, this other customer had been quietly looking at the display shoes. She was a young woman, maybe in her 20s, and she'd been admiring the same red heels. The young woman asked if we had those shoes in size 8. I confirmed we did and told her it was the last pair we had. She said they were perfect and that she'd take them. Karen's eyes went completely crazy when she heard this. She told the other customer to wait and declared that she was there first. The confused customer pointed out that Karen had said she needed size 7, while she needed size 8. Karen screamed that she didn't care what size they were because she saw those shoes first and they were hers. The other customer looked confused and honestly a little scared. She gently mentioned that the shoes wouldn't even fit Karen if she was a size 7. Karen shouted that she'd make them fit and that the other woman couldn't have them. This is where I should mention that Karen had been in our store exactly twice before. The first time she returned a pair of shoes after wearing them to 3 different events, claiming they were defective. The second time she demanded a discount on full-price items because she said she was a loyal customer. Both times my manager had given in to avoid a scene. I tried to explain that the other customer was looking at the size 8 shoes first and had every right to purchase them. Karen called this ridiculous and demanded to speak to my manager right away. Unfortunately, my manager was at lunch. I tried explaining this to Karen, but she was having none of it. She told me to ring up those shoes for her right now or she'd call corporate. The poor other customer said she didn't want any trouble and just wanted to buy some shoes. Karen told her to leave then. The woman looked so uncomfortable. I felt terrible for her. I said I couldn't sell Karen shoes that didn't fit her when another customer wanted to purchase them in her correct size. Karen called me a little brat and asked if I knew who she was. She claimed her husband was a lawyer and threatened to sue the entire company. She started yelling about how she spent thousands of dollars there every year, which was obviously not true. Then she demanded I give her the shoes for free as compensation for her emotional distress. The other customer quietly said she'd take the shoes and moved toward the register. Karen declared that if she couldn't have those shoes, nobody could. Before I could react, she walked toward the front of the store. I thought she was leaving, but instead, she went outside and picked up this huge decorative rock from the landscaping next to our entrance. I watched in horror as she raised it above her head and hurled it straight at our display window. The sound of breaking glass was deafening. The entire front window exploded and glass went everywhere. The display shoes, including the ones the other customer wanted, were buried under chunks of glass. The other customer gasped in shock while I announced I was calling the police. When Karen saw me reaching for the phone, she panicked. She started running toward her car, which was parked across the busy main street, but she wasn't looking where she was going. She was so focused on getting away that she ran straight into traffic without checking for cars. I heard the screech of brakes and a loud thud. A delivery truck had hit her as she was crossing. It wasn't going super fast since there was a lot of traffic, but it was enough to knock her down hard. The truck driver jumped out immediately, frantically saying he didn't see her and that she just ran out into the street. Within minutes, there were police cars and an ambulance. Karen was conscious but clearly hurt. Her leg was bent at a weird angle, and she was screaming about suing everyone, the truck driver, our store, the city for not having better crosswalks. The police officer told her that multiple witnesses saw her throw that rock through the store window and that she was under arrest for vandalism and destruction of property. Even while lying on a stretcher, Karen kept yelling that it was all our fault because we wouldn't sell her the shoes she wanted. The police officer looked at me for the full story. I explained everything, and the other customer backed up my version of events. We even had security cameras that caught the whole thing. Our store manager came back from lunch to find police cars, an ambulance, and our front window completely destroyed. The damage was over $15,000, but that was just the beginning of Karen's problems. The truck driver's company sued her for the damage to their vehicle and the driver's medical bills. Apparently, he hurt his back when he slammed on the brakes. Our store pressed charges for vandalism. Since the shoes she destroyed were limited edition and worth over $1,000, it counted as felony vandalism in our state. Karen ended up spending 6 months in jail because she couldn't afford bail. Her husband, who turned out to be a real estate agent and not a lawyer, filed for divorce while she was locked up. She lost her house, her car, and had to declare bankruptcy, paying for all the lawsuits. This happened about 5 years ago when I was juggling university classes and a part-time job at one of those small convenience store chains. You know the type, cramped aisles, overpriced snacks, and just enough staff to barely keep the place running. At the time, I was dealing with some serious health problems. I had multiple medical conditions that doctors were still trying to figure out. Some days I felt fine, other days I could barely stand for my entire shift. The constant hospital visits and medical appointments made my life unpredictable. I get dizzy spells, joint pain that came out of nowhere, and fatigue that hit me like a truck. My doctors had put me on light duties at work, which meant I couldn't lift heavy boxes or work the more physically demanding shifts. Most of my co-workers were understanding about it. They knew I wasn't faking anything. They'd seen me nearly collapse during shifts or watched me struggle to hide the pain when it got bad. But there was one supervisor who absolutely hated that I got any accommodations at all. Karen had been working at that store for years. She was one of those people who took pride in never calling in sick and thought anyone who needed help was just being weak. From day one, she made it clear she thought I was milking my health issues to get out of real work. She'd make snide comments about how nice it must be to have such a cushy job whenever I couldn't lift something heavy or needed to sit down for a minute. When I'd remind her I was following doctor's orders, she'd just scoff and mutter about how convenient that was. She'd assign me the worst possible tasks within my restrictions, hoping I'd quit. She'd schedule me for shifts right after I told her I had medical appointments, then act annoyed when I reminded her I couldn't work those times. The thing about our small store was that we all had each other on Facebook. It started as a practical thing. If someone got sick or had an emergency, we could quickly post in our group chat or message each other to find coverage. Most of us got along pretty well outside of work, so it didn't seem weird at the time. One busy Friday night shift, this guy came in trying to buy alcohol with what was obviously a fake ID. The picture looked nothing like him. The birth date would have made him 45, and the lamination was peeling off. When I refused the sale, he threw a complete tantrum. He claimed it was discrimination and threatened to sue the place. I pointed out that his ID said his birthday was in 1978, but he looked about 20. He insisted it was because he had good genes. He stormed out threatening to call corporate, leaving behind his fake ID in his anger. I thought it was hilarious and posted about it on Facebook when I got home. My post said something like how a customer tried to buy beer with a fake ID, and when I refused, he threatened to sue us for discrimination against people with good genes that make them look young. He even left his fake ID on the counter when he stormed out. My co-workers started commenting with laughing emojis and their own stories about ridiculous customers. It was all harmless fun until Karen decided to chime in. She left a comment saying that maybe if I actually did my job properly instead of making jokes about customers, people wouldn't get so angry. I was tired and not in the mood for her attitude, especially since she wasn't even working that night. I told her to shut up and mind her own business, using some choice words. Karen fired back with a comment about how this was typical lazy behavior from someone who fakes being sick to get out of real work. She said no wonder I couldn't handle basic customer service. My friend, who had nothing to do with work, jumped in to defend me, saying Karen was completely out of line and didn't know anything about my medical situation. Karen responded by calling my friend one of those welfare leeches sticking up for their friend, suggesting they were probably collecting disability checks while working under the table. My friend happened to be from a different ethnic background, and Karen's comment had some really ugly racial undertones that made everyone uncomfortable. Then another friend, who has a visible disability, made an innocent comment about how some customers can be ridiculous. Karen went completely off the rails and made a disgusting comment about disabled people weighing in, using horrible slurs, and saying that maybe if people like us spent less time making excuses and more time actually working, we'd understand how real jobs operate. This woman was going completely unhinged in a public Facebook thread, using language that would make a sailor blush, all while her profile clearly listed where she worked. I took screenshots of everything before blocking her. The next morning, I sat down and wrote a detailed email to every manager I had contact information for, the store manager, area manager, and the human resources department. I attached all the screenshots and explained how Karen had been making my work environment hostile for months. Within hours, I got a call asking me to come in for a meeting. When I arrived, there were 3 people waiting for me: my store manager, the area manager, and someone from HR I'd never met before. They told me they'd seen the screenshots I sent and needed to discuss the situation seriously. I explained the whole situation, from Karen's ongoing harassment about my health issues to the Facebook blow-up. They took notes and asked detailed questions about previous incidents. The area manager asked if she'd made comments about my medical accommodations before, and I confirmed she did it constantly because she thought I was faking everything. The HR representative told me I needed to file a formal grievance because this behavior was completely unacceptable. When I was filling out the paperwork, they mentioned something that made my jaw drop. The store manager explained that this wasn't the first complaint they'd received about her recently, and that she'd been harassing one of our other managers about his personal life. Apparently, Karen had also been making homophobic comments to one of the assistant managers, calling him slurs and making his work life miserable too. He'd filed the complaint just weeks before my incident, and she was already on her final warning. 2 weeks later, Karen was gone. Just like that. Years of employment down the drain because she couldn't keep her mouth shut on social media. She did it all while she was supposed to be working her shift at another location. The timestamps on the Facebook comments showed she was spending company time harassing people online instead of doing her job. I've been best friends with this guy since middle school. We met in 7th grade when we both got detention for the same stupid reason. We were both caught reading books during math class instead of paying attention to our teacher's lecture about fractions. It turns out we were reading the same fantasy series, and we just clicked immediately. We've been inseparable ever since. The thing is, people always assume we're dating. I guess it makes sense from the outside. We hang out constantly, we have similar interests, and we even look kind of alike. We're both a little chubby, we both have dark brown hair and brown eyes, and we're always laughing together about inside jokes. But here's the thing that makes it funny. I'm a lesbian, and he's straight but just not interested in dating anyone right now. We've talked about it plenty, and we're both perfectly happy being best friends. But try explaining that to nosy strangers who think they know everything about your life just by looking at you. This incident happened during our senior year of high school. It was one of those perfect spring afternoons where the weather was just right, not too hot, not too cold. We had finished our classes for the day and decided to walk to this little ice cream shop that was about 10 minutes from our school. It wasn't anything fancy, just one of those local places that's been around forever and has the best soft serve in town. We ordered our usual. I got vanilla with rainbow sprinkles, and he got chocolate with those little chocolate chips mixed in. The plan was to eat our ice cream while walking back towards school, where our parents would pick us up later. We ended up stopping on this sidewalk in front of a small park because we were having this intense debate about which movie in our favorite series was actually the best one. My friend was wearing this hilarious t-shirt he'd gotten online. It had a cartoon drawing of a slice of pizza with big googly eyes and a goofy smile, and underneath it said, "Eat me," in bold letters. He thought it was the funniest thing ever, and honestly, it was pretty amusing. We were both standing there eating our ice cream and laughing about something ridiculous when this woman appeared out of nowhere. I'd never seen her before in my life. She looked like she was in her 40s, dressed in workout clothes like she'd just come from the gym. She had this expression on her face like she'd just smelled something terrible, and she was staring directly at my friend's shirt with this look of disgust. But then she opened her mouth and everything got a million times worse. The woman looked at my friend and told him that ice cream wasn't good for him. Then she made this disgusting comment about how he should eat me instead if he liked licking so much. That's exactly what she said to two teenagers who were strangers to her, just standing there eating ice cream like normal human beings. My friend's face went bright red, and he just stood there with his mouth hanging open like he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. He's always been kinda shy, especially around adults, and I could tell he had no idea how to respond to something so inappropriate and weird. But me? I've never been the type to let someone get away with saying something that gross and uncalled for, especially not to my best friend. So I looked this woman straight in the eye and gave her my biggest, most innocent smile. I told her not to worry because we did it every night. Then I added that we also shared a father. The transformation on her face was incredible. It was like watching someone go through all 5 stages of grief in about 3 seconds. First confusion, then horror, then disgust, then panic, and finally just pure shock. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, and she made this little choking sound. She stammered that it was disgusting and that we couldn't just say things like that. I asked her what we couldn't do. I pointed out that she was the one who brought up licking in the first place, and I was just agreeing with her suggestion. She looked back and forth between us, and I guess our similar appearance suddenly made a lot more sense to her twisted mind. Her face went from red to white to green, and she actually took a step backward. She called us both sick and threatened to call someone about us. I told her to go ahead. I suggested she explain to whoever she called that she had approached 2 minors eating ice cream and made sexual comments to them. I mentioned that I was sure that would go over really well. That's when she literally turned around and speed walked away so fast she was almost running. She kept looking back over her shoulder like we might chase after her or something. My friend and I just stood there watching her disappear around the corner. When she was gone, my friend started laughing so hard he nearly dropped his ice cream cone. He talked about how he couldn't believe I had actually said what I said and kept mentioning the look on her face. I told him she deserved it and asked what was wrong with people who say that kind of thing to teenagers. He admitted that he thought he was going to die of embarrassment and had no idea what to say to her. I explained that's why he had me around. Someone had to keep the weirdos in line. We finished our ice cream and walked back towards school, still giggling about the whole thing. My friend kept shaking his head and talking about how crazy some people are. I was just proud that I'd managed to turn the tables on someone who thought she could make inappropriate comments to strangers. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.